So now that we've covered the general sort of linear formula of all lines, we talked about in the last video kind of this little thing here, y equals mx plus c. And this formula here essentially tells us everything we need to know about a line, at least its most important points. It tells us, well, how is the y changing relating to x, and where on the y-axis does the line pass through. And that you'll see now is kind of all we need to graph lines in general. And it obviously goes deeper than this, of course, but now we can work through a couple of examples. We can draw a few lines just by taking these two components, our m and our c. And we did this kind of before. Like, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and it was cool, but we had to draw a table of values, and that we saw that was quite time consuming. But now that we've come up with this general formula, well, we can approach graphing lines in a far easier way. So I'm going to give you let's do two examples in this video. We're going to graph the line, let's go 2x plus, forgot this bit. We've got y equals 2x plus 1. And my next one is going to be y equals negative 3x minus 1. Okay, so from these two equations, we're going to identify the main parts. So here, we know that our gradient, our m, equals to 2. That's what we're given in the formula. And our y-intercept equals 1, given by this part of the formula. So we can pretty much, with these two pieces of information, start to construct a graph here. Now, we know that the y-intercept is positive 1, so it's going to cut through the y-axis here. And I know that because of the gradient of 2, when x goes up by 1, so let's say when x goes up by 1, my y should go up by 2, and so on and so forth. And the same goes in this direction. From negative 1 gets to 0, and we go from minus 1 on the y up to positive 1. And we can now just draw this line in. Well, we have, okay, our intercept, and passing through all of these points, well, this is what happens with the information we have been given. So in each of these little notches tells us that, okay, for every time x goes up by 1, y goes up by 2. And an important point of this graph is where it cuts through the y-axis, and that's here. That's this point 1 given to us in our equation. Now, let's look at this one here. And this one will be a little bit trickier, but not undoable. So, once again, our gradient here equals minus 3. So this is going to have a negative relationship, isn't it? We talked about this a couple of videos ago. And this means that when x goes up by 1, y will go down by 3. So instead of increasing up in this positive direction, it will go down in the negative direction. And we know that this is going to pass through a y-intercept of negative 1 given to us there. So let's draw this in. So I usually start with my y-intercept first. I like to think of the y-intercept as a nice starting point, and we can kind of branch out in both directions as I did here. I went first on all the points in the positive x, and down here to see what happens in the negative x. But taking this, we can take our starting point of -1. That's going to be here. And we know that, okay, when x goes up by 1 now, let's use this color. When x goes up by 1, my y should go down by 3. So from -1, it's going to go down. Whoops, went a little too far. It's going to go down to -4. Do we kind of see how that works here? And that is all given to us. That's all given to us by these two key bits of information. Let me do that in another color so you can see those. Our gradient and our y-intercept. So that's going to go down to here. And also, this went down 3 spots when x went up by 1 on the other side of on the negative side of the x-axis. So here, sort of 1x ago, here we're at 0 at this point here. 1x ago was at -1. So -1, whoops. And we went down by 3. So that means we started up here. Because when x went from -1 to 0, y went from +2 down to -1. So that is a 3-unit decrease as shown here. Now, drawing that in, I get this here. And as we expected, we have a graph going in this negative direction. So as my x goes up, my y goes down. And now we can draw these a lot easier without even having to worry about tables of values and figuring that stuff out. Now, a table of values are great as well, and we're going to talk about them again in the next video to talk about certain points along these lines. But a very important thing to know with linear relationships is that we just need 2 bits of information. 2 bits are all we need. We just need to know how y changes with x, and we need to know where y sort of starts from, where we can start to draw something from. And a good place is the y-intercept. That's another kind of just a visually significant point on our graph, because that tells us sort of, okay, where is this cutting through this big vertical axis in the middle? And then from there, we can branch out on either side like we did here and here. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.